Welcome to In Praise of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Dr. Death. Now this series is a platform to enable me to speak about the projects of my band, 30 Immolated, 16 Returned, their compositional structure, aesthetic, philosophy, so on, etc. Today, we're going to begin by looking at the debut album of 30 Immolated, 16 Returned, self-titled, and we're going to do this by taking a look at the thesis document that was written about it. That's correct. This piece is an actual doctoral thesis that I wrote at the University of Alberta between the years of 2012 and 2017. So, my thesis work, 30 Immolated, 16 Returned, reflects the systematic transgression of sexual taboos found in the Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom through a 30-minute sonic and dramatic work comprised of extreme metal, harsh noise, and avant-garde composition, live electronics, and an integrated dramatic theme. So let's take that apart. 30 Immolated, 16 Returned, the name of the project and the name of the band, is actually taken from the final page of the Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom. It is a tally of those who were killed and those who were kept for later. So 30 immolated, so 30 persons were sacrificed, 16 returned. 16 victims are brought back with the libertines to Paris to continue to be their slaves and to be debauched and awful things like that. Now the next part of this reflects the systematic transgression of sexual taboos found in the Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom. There's a lot going on there. So I go down to the next paragraph and explains this. In 120 days, Sade catalogs several sexual taboos and sadistic acts and organizes them as chapters, labeling them as types of passions. Each of these passions focuses on either a particular part of the body that is being destroyed or a type of sadistic sexual pleasure. So in the story, it begins with very simple pleasures, little things like coprophilia, urination, and then as it moves on, it gets to flagellation, and then it gets to rape, incest, cutting, amputation, and finally to murder. So it's this escalating structure like this of the sexual taboos, and this is what I wanted to base my piece of music from something fairly simple, straightforward, and structured, and let it move slowly into insane chaos. Now, my goal for this project is to place the observer into an environment of oppressive sensorial input that reflects the setting of 120 Days of Sodom. How I did that is I mixed not only the chaotic sounds of the band 30 Immolated, 16 Returned, but also in the initial construction of this work, I also created a dramatic part of it, a part where I hired a choreographer and several professional dancers, as I was working with many of them at the time. And with this, I devised a type of dramatic action that would reflect the sonic part, starting from simple, going more and more chaotic and more wild until eventually you can see the actors being destroyed by us, the libertines. We do this. To achieve this, an extreme metal quintet begins by playing rigidly structured music that, through the gradual transgression of text, performance style, and techniques, and the introduction of reflexive electronic instruments, or R.E.Is, gives way to chaos. So, the extreme metal quintet, which is now a quartet, as we used to have a soprano vocalist, but now we've decided to allow all four of us libertines to speak our voices. We begin by playing rigidly structured music. Death metal. Death metal is rigidly structured. There's hardly ever any improvisation, and if there is, there's very particular rules to the improvisation, like it belongs in solos or little sections for the drums, or if there's a little bit of noise. As this goes along, to match the type of escalation found in the 120 Days of Sodom, we lose that structure to more and more noise techniques, to more and more improvisation and things like that. So these are extended instrumental techniques communicated through customized notation. So I was able to customize the type of notation for the performers so that they can visually see the chaos that I'm trying to create. Now on top of this, the dramatic portion, the dancers, were given R.E.Is, reflexive electronic instruments, that I created myself from hand. Now these instruments are electronics, and they deal mostly with feedback, both electronic and sound through speakers and contact microphones, attached to their physical being so that the dancer themselves becomes the instrument. Any tiny little movement they have has a dramatic effect on the sound of these electronic instruments, making them very precise, honed instruments. And same as the music, same as the dramatic theme. It starts off very simple, the actors are very still and they're bonded, and then as the piece moves along, they're more and more free and their electronic instruments become more prevalent until it adds to absolute chaos at the very end of the piece of music. This is a basic summary of the debut self-titled EP 30 Immolated 16 Returned and the basic philosophy behind it. As we move on from week to week, I'm going to do these short little videos for you and explain in more detail. If you have any questions, please feel free to direct message me.